We are live.
And we are live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to TTSN, the Transformational Squirrel Network, where we make shift happen. Today, our guest is Warren Berry, the CEO and founder of Instinctive Solutions. Warren is a myofascial release therapist and has been doing that for 27 plus years. He's a Colby consultant and an entrepreneur, and he's owned several businesses throughout the years. He also has his own podcast. Yes, I said pondcast. He hosts a podcast called Better the Pond. Warren, we're excited to have you here today. We're excited to learn about what fascia is, why it's important, and more from you, also about your research. So to get us started, can you tell us what has brought you to this point in your career, in your life, where you are today?
Wow, that's a big question. So first of all, before we jump into all this, I have to say that I am honored to be with you two squirrels. And not only today, but I have actually been on this program.
Can't hear you.
What?
There.
We can now.
Yeah, you're good now.
Weird. Okay. Did we get any of that?
Yeah. So you're excited to be on this podcast, and you've been on it before.
Yeah. And because it was so amazingly good with you two, I had no choice but to come back.
Well, thank you. We're glad that you're here with us again.
No, thank you. So the question is my journey. Is that the question?
Yes, your journey. What's brought you to here, to where you are today?
Well, it all started in Regina, Saskatchewan. I have this could be a while. But, in my career, one of the things, I was actually having a conversation with my hairstylist, as a matter of fact, and we were talking about stories, and we were just sharing stories, and it brought to mind of my story, and to where I am today, because I got into the massage therapy world, which I don't do anymore, but I became a massage therapist. I wanted to help people, and so I went to college, did my thing. But I was, I got into practice, and I was seeing patients, and I often saw patients who were in chronic pain. And so you do the massage thing, right? And they'd say, yeah, you know what? I felt better for a day. I felt better for 2 days, and it came back. So you treat them again. I felt better for a day. I felt better for 2 days, and it came back. And this kept happening. And I was really, really frustrated because I couldn't understand why. I knew there was something else. The problem was I didn't know what the other part was. And so then I got invited to go to this Introduction to Myofascial Release course, which I thought, and I'll be honest, I thought it was a bunch of woo-woo. They were talking about energy, they were talking about emotions, they were talking about this fascia stuff, which I'd never heard of before, and I'm like, well, yeah, those people do those kind of things. That's not what I do, right? Because I knew that I was book smart, right? And I thought I knew it all. Little did I know. So I wasn't going to go to this. I thought, well, what the heck? I'm curious. I'm going to go check this out. And so we went on the first day, and it was very theoretical, and we were understanding about fascia and those kind of things. And I went, hey, you know what? There's something to this. You've really got my attention. And it was upon day 2 when we actually got into the work. And as soon as I felt it, I knew. I knew. That was the moment that I went, oh my, and my world completely changed from that moment on. And that was because I felt fascia for the first time. And from then after that, that was the pebble that started the avalanche.
So Warren, for people that don't know what fascia is, how can you explain that?
So going into to understand what fascia is, so if anybody on this call, and if you have questions and things, please go into the chat, because the way that I try to explain it, if anybody on this listening has ever been a farming background, We're a hunting background. It's a really good visual. If you don't, we've all got kitchen backgrounds. So if you think about, like, you know, if you have think of a boneless, skinless chicken breast that's on your counter, and there's that thin sheet that sits over top of it, that's fascia.
So that thin, see-through coating over top of it that's kind of hard, or not hard, but
Hard
like it to peel off.
to peel off. So if have you ever made baby back ribs? Cindy, have you ever made baby back ribs?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and they're delicious. Poor critters. But you know, have you ever taken that membrane off? Have you ever got a knife out of that membrane in the back and pulled that membrane off?
Yeah.
That is fascia. Now, so here's my question to people. Like, the next time you ever do that, or buy, like, I always give the example of a whole tenderloin of Costco, and you'll see that all that stringy stuff that's in there, right? If you next time you grab that pull that layer off the back of the ribs, try to pull it apart. You never will. Right. And so it is unbelievably strong. And that's actually what holds us together. And anybody with a farming background, if you've ever like skinned an animal, if you see all that shiny white stuff on the outside, right, that's fascia. Sinew is the farmer term for it. But if you can picture it in your mind's eye, my question I ask all my patients is, where does it start and where does it stop?
It doesn't. It's everywhere, right?
It's everywhere, but it does not stop. It's continuous. It's the only thing in the human body that connects everything to everything outside of blood.
And so if you were to have like a surgery or something or an injury, does that reconnect itself?
It does reconnect itself, yeah. So that's what scar tissue is, right? So when we hear about people, well, we got to get rid of the scar tissue. You don't get rid of scar tissue. Right? You can reshape it, you can reform it, you can work with it, but you'll never get rid of it, because that's the bridge of the gap that basically when we've got, you know, a surgery or a wound or something like that, right? It separates, but then it grows back together. That's the scar tissue. That's why when scar tissue heals, that's why it's this big matted mess, and that's why you can see it, right? Where before you couldn't. So the fascia basically, what it surrounds and supports every muscle, every bone, every joint, every nerve, every organ, every blood vessel, your brain, your spinal cord, your eyes, your ears. There's nothing it does not touch. And it's three-dimensional. So people often will say, well, that's the stuff under the muscle. Well, yes, but it's so much bigger than that. It surrounds absolutely everything. It's the only thing that connects everything to everything. It's what holds us together. So when I got into that world, and I felt it, it was like, that's the stuff, right? That's why that people weren't getting better, because it wasn't the muscle. I mean, as a massage therapist, so I always tell people, it's kind of funny, like when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Absolutely.
Right. So we have, you know, if it's a massage therapist, well, what do they work on? Well, muscle, because that's their job, right? So everything's muscular. And then when you have a chiropractor, well, everything is bone. Right? And you have physio, everything is stretching and exercise. So everybody does their job, they do it really well, right? But there's that piece in the middle that binds it all together, that often is the piece that's missing, because the massage therapist, well, you got a tight muscle. The chiropractor says, well, you got a locked joint. And the physio says, well, you got a weak core, right? But they're not looking at that piece that is actually combining and holding us all along the way.
Right. So what you do is kind of combine all three so that you can release that fascia to make everything work together. Is that correct?
That is correct. So you go in, and so when we have, so in my world, there is a really screechy sound going on somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hear that?
Probably me.
It's Cindy's fan. Sorry.
Yeah.
It'll continue for a minute or two. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow.
So in that minute or two, you want me
Okay.
to ask you a couple of quick shot questions?
Well, is there anybody on the chat that has any questions so far? How about that?
There isn't there aren't any questions yet. Though, there we go. So you're linking the chiro massage pieces together through your practice. So you're releasing that fascia. Can you explain that, please?
So there's so fascia, right, when restricted, can have a compressive force of up over 2,000 pounds per square inch.
2,000 pounds per square inch.
2,000 pounds per square inch. That's the force that it can have in the human body. So you wonder why you have pain.
Mm-hmm.
And are you going to stop that fan?
I wish I could.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
So, but 2,000 pounds per square inch. And in my world, right, bones are stupid. So bones are stupid. They don't care, right? So again, when we have 2,000 pounds per square inch, either pulling on a joint or pulling on the spine or pulling on a shoulder or pulling on a hip or pulling on a sacroiliac joint or whatever, right? There's that compression and that load that sits there. So when the load sits there, it can lock the joint, and I can go to the chiropractor, which is fine, right? I can unlock the joint, but that's why a day or two later, I'm right back where I started from. Because that holding pattern, that fascial restriction and that pattern is now locked. It goes and locks itself back down because we pattern. Human beings pattern.
Right. So it's your muscle memory kind of thing, right?
Not muscle memory, because
No?
it's not muscle memory. See, muscle, when we look at fascia and break it down, fascia goes around each individual muscle fiber, not around the whole outside. It's around every single fiber. So when we basically look at tight muscle, right, that fascia can basically restrict and hold and torque, right? Now it appears like muscle memory, or it appears like a tight muscle.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what's actually happening. It's that fascial restriction which is now locking that into place.
Okay.
It's not muscle memory, it's fascial memory.
Okay.
Wow.
Fascial
And so,
memory.
yeah.
And so there's a question here that asks, can we learn how to release ourselves?
Absolutely. So yes, you can, and there's a bit of a trick to it, because when we look at muscularly stretching, which is the most common thing, I want to get in the doorway and I got to stretch myself out, right? And so the funny thing about fascia is that when you try to stretch it out, you don't want to stretch it, you want to release it. And so, and when you get into a stretch, you know, here's the typical model. Get out, oh geez, I'm so tight. I gotta stretch, right? And it's like, and so what you're really actually doing is nothing, except you're getting frustrated. So, so the thing is, if you're working too hard, if you think you're working too hard, you're working too hard. So let's just try something. Okay, let's talk about stretching fascia on your own. So we're gonna do this together, and anybody on the call can do this as well. So hold your arm out. Just hold it out. Okay. Yep. Now pretend like somebody is gently pulling your arm. They're gently pulling it, right? You're on the rack and you're gently pulling it. Can you feel a pull all the way down your arm?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now what I want you to do is take any finger, right? Pay attention, be aware, move and take any finger and move a finger. Just move a finger and feel what happens all the way down your arm and maybe even into your chest. Move one finger, move a thumb, move your wrist, turn it. Feel what happens along that whole entire arm, possibly into your chest,
Mm-hmm.
maybe into your neck, maybe down your side, maybe into your ribs.
Mm-hmm.
What does your finger have to do with your ribs? What's the answer?
Everything.
Nothing.
Everything. Your finger has everything to do with your ribs. Your finger has everything to do with your toes. Your finger, right? So when you talk about stretching, when you put your arm on, you hold it out there, and you start to let it basically start to stretch itself out. That's how you start to release fascia.
Okay.
You're not working hard.
Right.
What you're doing is you're allowing it to stretch. You're allowing it to open.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get further into a more advanced aspect of fascia, it's called myofascial unwinding, and it's letting the body do what the body wants to do. And so when you actually get out of your own way and get out of your head, your body will actually, this sounds crazy, but your body will move on its own. It will take
Mhm.
your body where it needs to go.
Yes.
And so, and that's when you can get to that space, that's how you release your own thoughts.
Hmm.
Oh, nice.
Very cool. There's another question here that says, have you ever worked on scar tissue for someone who had gastric bypass, like stomach stapling?
Good question. You know what? In all my years, I've never actually worked on that specific. But to me, a scar is a scar is a scar. A surgery is a surgery is a surgery. Fascia doesn't care. And here's the interesting thing, and I kind of alluded to it when we, when we put this post out on Facebook, we talk about emotions and talk about memory, right? And yep, so I'm going there. Because we talk about, then there's, we've all talked about cellular memory and all those kind of things like that. Fascia holds memory. So in every fascial fiber, every single tiny little fiber that goes to the human body, actually is fluid filled. So that fluid is basically it's information that travels through. Right? So we can look at it as, you can call it liquid light, you can call it energy, you can call it fluid, you can call it information. I don't care what you call it, but it's information that's traveling. So the example I like to use, and I'm going to come back to the bypass bit, right? Because it's really important, is that have you ever walked into a room where there's been an argument? You don't know what's going on. You walk in the room, right?
And the energy is thick.
And the energy is thick.
Yes.
Now, you tell me, what picks that up first? Does your body pick it up first, or does your brain pick it up first?
Body.
Yeah.
Your body picks it up first, then your brain makes a story.
Mm-hmm.
Your body picks it up, you get the energy, then your brain cognitively then says, oh, well, something must be going on, or Bob is always that way. Like whatever story you create. But the point to this is your body picks it up. The body picks up that energy. The energy goes in your system. Your system then is transferring that energy to your body. Then your brain says, oh, I got to make a story. That's how our body remembers. So if we've had a surgery, so a gastric bypass, well, there's a reason you had a gastric bypass, and most likely there's probably a weight issue. Well, if there was a weight issue, there was probably something going on psychologically that actually led to that, right? So there's a whole story that goes through there, right? That fascial system will remember. It knows, right? And so the thing is, when you get into scar tissue, when you get into some people, if you get into the scarring, right, you can go into the emotional side of yourself because that information will now come up. And that's a whole different level. But now you're actually dealing with the problem at the core of the problem versus saying, oh, I just got to release a scar.
Right.
So
Okay.
when I talk to people, I say, I don't care about your pain. And I really don't. I care about your problem. Pain is just a byproduct, right? Pain will never hurt you.
Pain will never hurt you.
Pain will never hurt you.
But it does.
No, it doesn't. Pain will never hurt you. Pain is a response
Right.
to a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how does, you mentioned emotions, okay? And so fascia, what is the role really that it plays? What does that, like, if I am upset,
Mm-hmm.
does fascia actually play a role in that, in me being upset?
The upset itself, right, is, well, the fascia doesn't play a role in that per se, with that, like that direct question, because that's an emotional response to an external environment.
Okay.
Now, if you see a pattern, though, right, and I get upset every time X occurs, well, now we're seeing a pattern. So then what's the pattern in behind that? All right. And now is that sometimes when fascia can basically become involved. So I'll go back into my original story, right? As soon as I felt fascia, right? That's like, that was the moment, that was the pebble that started the avalanche, when I just went, oh my God. And I went and took a whack of classes and just dug deep. And I came back from those classes. I took my massage cream and I threw it in the garbage, and that was the end of that. And I've never had massage cream in my hand since, nor will I ever. But the point is that when I got on that second day of class and we got into this unwinding aspect of fascia, right? And I did go into an emotional release. I had no idea. I didn't have a clue, right? I know what I'm doing and I'm a therapist and blah, 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 blah. And I was all in my ego, right? When I actually, I literally melted down. I had an emotional release. I was insane, right? Best thing I ever did, right? But I got up I came out of that and I went, oh my God, I feel like I've lost 1,000 pounds. So cognitively in my mind, right? Did I know that was what that was about? Not a clue. But when my system brought that information forward, there it was, right? So when we talk about patterns of things, that's what I look for is like, what's the pattern? So every time something occurs. So let's just take an example of a car accident. You can be in a car accident, right? And you can have trauma from that car accident, right? You can witness a car accident and have trauma from that car accident. Right. Every time I see a car get close, I get upset. The upset is just a response to the external stimulus, right? But the memory that sits in behind it of that trauma is now playing itself over and over and over and over again, right? It's a record player that keeps playing the same song. So every time that something occurs, every time a car gets closer, whatever the case may be, right? Therefore, that triggers my system because that energy is already sitting there. Emotion is just energy in motion, right? And now I have an emotional response, right? So now I'm triggered. So now that's when my fascial system now plays a role in the emotional side of me. Does that answer the question?
Yes. And so until you actually release that from your system, it'll keep coming back for you.
It'll always find you because the funny thing is the body is always talking to you. The question is, are you listening?
Right.
Right. And so that'll sit and play and play and play. And that's why sometimes if you see how you keep a track of the same things in your life, right? It's because your system is wanting to let go of that. It doesn't want it there. Energy never stops moving, ever. It's impossible for energy to stop moving. Right. What it can do, though, is it can sit and spin, right? And that's where then all of a sudden somebody goes, "Poop!" I poke that spot, and that energy starts to move, right? So it'll always sit there, and it'll always be sitting in the background until you let it go. It's funny, and I'll tell you a funny story that just came to my mind is when I was talking about unwinding and going back in the past, right? So I was out in Sedona, Arizona, getting my training, and when in training, you're a therapist and a patient at the same time, right? So you're swapping out. And I went into a time when I was a kid. I was probably 10 years old. I'm with my buddy Dave, and I'm running, right? And Dave throws a rock, right? And he hits me in the head. And I touch the top of my head, right? And then I see blood, right? And then I freak out, right? Now I had no memory of that. Like I had no cognitive memory of that. It didn't even register. I'd have to work really hard to think of that time that it happened. What happened is that information then found me. But then there was an emotional response that came out of that where I was scared and I was angry, right? I was a 10-year-old kid. As an adult, at being 38 that I am,
Sorry.
As an adult, right, I would look and go, well, what was the big deal? But I'm coming at it from a 38-year-old's mind. But when you allow yourself to get out of your own way and it goes back to when you were a 10-year-old, that 10-year-old is now expressing that energy as a 10-year-old. It's still sitting there. So once I let go of the anger and the whatnot, and I mean, I wasn't mad at him. I was mad at the circle. I was scared, right? And have any clue. And it came out and it was very clear. I could picture it. I could see it. I remember it very vividly, right? But then I let it go.
Mhm.
And that happens with so many people. And unfortunately, there's been so many people who have had trauma in their lives, right? The amount of, I hate to say this, but it's unfortunate how many women have been abused. And it's
Mhm.
scary and it's sad, right? But they've
Right.
lived that same pattern, right? And it keeps playing itself out and keeps playing itself, but they've never had the opportunity to let it go. You can't talk your way through it.
Mhm.
It is not cognitive. It is subconscious. It's sitting in the background and it's playing itself out. And that's why people will find themselves in the same patterns, in the same situations, and the same
Yeah.
people, the same, right? Because that energy is attracted to that same energy.
Right.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And
Do you
I know. Sorry,
sorry,
go ahead, Cindy.
do you find some people are apt to hold on to it, like won't release it when you work on them?
Yep.
Something that maybe won't release until it's time or until they're ready to let go?
The biggest challenge, and there's two sides to my practice, right? So I'll give you an example of stuff. So one, I'm seeing Farmer Bob, right? Farmer Bob's got back pain. And Farmer Bob just wants to feel better because he wants to get back out and go farming, right? Most likely, Farmer Bob is probably not going to go there, right? Most likely. It's like, here, because I mean, medically, right? I've seen the doctor, I've seen the chiropractor, I've got my x-rays, blah, blah, blah. This is what's supposed to happen. So in that case, well, we're gonna actually treat the fascia. We're gonna treat it structurally. We're gonna fix this. We're gonna move that. We're gonna, we're gonna take the load off, right? And then they're going to feel better, and they're gonna get back on their life again, right? And hopefully, if all goes well, I don't see them again. Best case scenario, right? Nothing personal. But there's other people though that I have actually patients who you can tell that the pain is emotional, right? It's showing up physical, but it really is emotional. But they're really afraid to go there. They're afraid of what they'll find. They're afraid of what they're feeling. So the ego doesn't want to let go.
Mhm.
It says, I'm in control. I know what's going on. Don't mess with me, right? And they get protective, right? Because what's behind the door?
Right. It's unknown, right?
It's unknown. And
Yeah,
that's the scary part.
that's
The
right.
best thing you can ever do is open the door,
Mhm.
right? Can it be messy? Absolutely, right? But it's never as bad as we think it is, just like anything else in life. Right, but it's going in behind there. But some people are afraid to go there, and I've had some people, the emotions come up, and then they try to shut them down.
Right.
Come up and they come up and they come up, and then they try to shut them down. Right, because I'm not willing to actually let go
Mhm.
because it's scary on the other side.
Yeah, yeah, it's for a lot of people it's scary. Change is scary, right? That's why we stay in our uncomfortable zone. It's our comfort zone, but it's uncomfortable, right? But we
Right.
stay there because change is scary. It's hard because, what if the other side is something that's hurts me or that is hard for me to deal with, right? It's easier to stay in the comfort zone or the zone that we know than to move past it sometimes.
And so, if I could just make a comment on that, is change isn't scary.
Right.
The process of change is scary.
And a lot of people believe change is scary and they don't want to approach it, right? They don't
Right.
want to see it. Yeah.
That, yeah,
We have another question.
okay.
Viv wants to know, are there any tips or tricks to assessing those subdued emotions?
Boy, tips and tricks to those subdued emotions. I think that one of those things is, and I believe that we know. This may sound a little bit not an exact answer, but the thing is, I think if you really stop and you really listen to yourself, if you get quiet. So most people in the world, we live in a world of distractions. We love distracting ourselves. We don't want to be alone. We're always trying to do, right? Because I don't want to actually have to deal with me, right? The hardest person you'll ever face in your entire life is yourself.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things that if you get quiet, right? And if you just told the truth, you could actually basically see that messages start to come up, right? But you got to pay attention to them. And so it's one of those things. And if I tell people, if I've treated them, let's just say, and we've kind of poked the bear a little bit, right? And they start to get emotional, right? I say, like, keep it going. The next time, if you're at home, and it's hard, and I understand, like, we all live with families and stuff like that, and like, you don't want, dad wigging out, but but the point is that if you feel it coming up, let it come up. And if you feel that coming up, let it come up. And if you feel that coming up, then let that come up, right? But it's allowing it to actually, it's getting the hardest thing I will ever say, and I'll say this a million years or a million times, right? The hardest thing that I've ever had to face with my patients is having them get out of their own way. Get out of your head is that's so hard for people to do that, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to rationalize it in their mind. It is not in your rational mind. You cannot rationalize your way through it. It's like going to talk therapy. Keep talking. Let me know how it works. Right. So the tips and tricks is allowing yourself to feel it. So let's just say you feel angry. I'll just make this up. Right. Oh, I feel mad. Right. So the typical thing is, well, I shouldn't be mad. There's no reason I should be mad about that. I mean, that, well, that just makes no sense. And off I go and I'll distract myself. Right. If you feel that, if you have the time and the space and that anger comes up, then let it come up. And then let it come up and let it come up. And you'll be amazed at where you'll go. Right. Yeah. Interesting thing is the body will never, ever, ever injure itself. It's impossible. That's why you can't hold your breath and kill yourself.
Right. You'll just pass out.
You'll just pass. It will not let you. The body will never, ever, ever hurt itself. The only time unfortunately, people kill themselves, that's a psychological issue. That's where they're actually, they're making a choice at that point, right? But when you're out of your own way, the body will never, ever injure itself. It's self-protective, right? It's our heads that get in the way, that try to tell a story, to try to actually protect that model. And if anybody has ever read Dr. John Sarno's work, it's really quite amazing. He talks about emotion and pain, and then between that, right? I look at the emotion, the pain, and the fascial system now becomes layered, all becomes weaved into one, right? And when people have traumas, whether it be emotional trauma or physical trauma, it's no different. It is no different. It's the same thing at the end of the day, right? So if you think about when you're stressed, when you're talking, Tammy, or talking about when I'm upset or something like that, just think about this for a second. When I'm upset, right, whether I'm sad, I'm angry, whatever the case may be, right, is your body going,
It is not in a meditative state.
It is not in a meditative state. What's it doing?
Oh, it's like curling in, right? I'm becoming a ball of tense muscle, right? It's
now, is that muscle?
Probably
or
not.
Is it fascia? It's probably not,
Probably
right?
fascia.
It's your system, and your system is trying to go protect it. So if you've ever, anybody in the call, if you've ever been in that state, think about it for a second and ask yourself, do I feel like I'm being shrink wrapped?
Do I feel like I'm being trapped?
Shrink wrapped.
Oh, shrink wrapped. Yeah. Right? Absolutely.
I'm in a sealer, right? And that feeling of being shrink wrapped is not muscular. We think it is, but it's not, because we've been taught that. It's fascial. It's that self-protection. When your system is going, oh, and I'm going to protect myself, right? And then now my muscles get compressed, my bones get compressed, my nerves get compressed, all those things like that, right? And that's why I feel like I'm being shrink wrapped. Right? It's a fascial system basically trying to hang on.
Wow, that's really interesting. Never thought of it that way.
It's totally. I mean, think one of the examples I like to use too, of like on the other end of the spectrum, right? So let's say look at people that are older, right? So the aged and afflicted, and they're in the home, right? And how many times, right? If grandma, right, is she's in the home, and grandma, oh, I'm so stiff, right? How often do you hear that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the question: is the stiffness that they have muscular? Does anybody want to chime in on the chat?
It is fascial.
It is fascial. It is not muscular. So what happens is fascia needs, not wants, needs movement. Fascia isn't a water-based system. It needs fluidity. It needs motion. So when fascia does not move, that's why we get stiff, because it's not moving. So that's why older people who are more or less active, like the less active you become, and welcome to all of a sudden Zoom, we feel stiffer because we're not moving as much as we did before. We need that fluidity.
Is,
Right.
is the is the fascia tied in with the lymph system?
It is tied in with the lymph system because of the fact that, I mean, it's around all the lymph nodes. Fascia moves, it's the fluidity around it, so it ties back in. So as we know, that the lymphatic system does not have a pump, right? The lymphatic system needs
Right.
movement in order to pump, right? So then yes, that the motion that occurs. So if I've got a shoulder, let's say a shoulder issue, where my shoulder's been locked down, I've had surgery, I have an injury, I've got whatever, and it's not moving, then nothing around that is moving either. So I can get, now if I get a lymphatic restriction, right? Well, now that's not moving.
Right.
Right. And so now I can get a buildup of lymph. I can, and we can get into all sorts of cancers and all sorts of crazy things that go along with it, right? Because that system actually has to move. And as soon as it stops moving, then basically everything else around stops it as well. So people with like edema and those kind of things like that, or when a poor circulation, is it poor circulation because of your heart, or is it poor circulation because of your fascial system? Because the fascial system surrounds and supports every blood vessel.
Right.
So if I start to, put a compression on a blood vessel, right? If I start to squeeze my garden hose, right? The tap's on at the other end. But at any point, if I squeeze that garden hose, I'm not going to get water out the other end.
Right.
Is it a blood vessel issue? There's nothing wrong with your hose.
Right.
Right. But it's the compression around the hose.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem.
Right.
And that would be where the emotion is, right? That's where when you store some sort of trauma in an area in the body and then it's contracting. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, right? And it's now it's trapped, right? So it's stuck,
Mm-hmm.
right? And whenever we have inflammatory conditions, and inflammation and fascia are like the brother and sister that never got along, right? So when you have that inflammation sort of coming in there, it causes a restriction. Have you ever heard of fascial, or have you ever heard of adhesions?
Yes.
Abdominal adhesions are fascia. Stuck. It's adhered. It's an adhesion, right? So now when that's adhered, right? Now my intestines, my upper lower intestines aren't moving. They're not, and now I got blockages, or right. That's what an adhesion is. Now I get an inflammatory process. I've just poured glue into it. It's adhered. Now anything else around that is no longer free to move.
Right. Mm-hmm. Hmm. We have another question for you.
Great.
That Sheila is asking, her neck has been really stiff lately. How can I release this?
So if your neck is here's the funny thing. So I'm gonna ask Sheila this. Sheila, you have a stiff neck. This is going right to Sheila. Okay. Is the problem your neck? That's my question.
We'll wait for.
I'm gonna wait for an answer. I want her to chime in. Is it your neck?
Yeah. While we're waiting for her to chime in, I'm just going to make a comment about, because I have been to your practice and you've treated me a number of times, and I remember crying on your table, not knowing why the heck I was crying, but it was a release from you moving the fascia. And I don't have a clue where that came from, but it was there. It was just an emotional release. So Sheila said, more likely my lower back SI joints.
Ah.
Yeah.
Very, very wise.
Been there, done that.
Done that. But a lot of the times where the pain is usually not where the problem is.
Yeah.
Right. So, when we look at it, what I would say to Sheila is say, well, okay, so if you've got a pelvis issue or an SI joint issue or a lumbar issue, is deal with that first, because if you don't, right, your neck will never get better, because we are in gravity. We're all in gravity, right? So our eyes always have to stay level with the horizon. Always. Doesn't matter what we do. Our eyes will always stay level with the horizon. It's reflexive, right? So we don't walk around like this unless we got like a really screwed up, right? Right. But what we will, but if I got a problem down below and I shift my pelvis, right, I will bring my head back the other way to keep my eyes level with the horizon. Well, now I got this pull in my neck, right? Because it's working really hard to contract. It's trying to stabilize me so I can stay here in the ground so I don't fall over, because we're in gravity, right? So now I've got this tight neck that just never seems to go away. Well, maybe it's not your neck at all. Maybe it's something that's underneath that's actually the problem. So, if you want to get some relief, right? I mean, it's basically that if you just take into a stretch, let's just say as an example of a neck stretch, don't go into the stretch, because now you're just doing nothing. You're blowing right past the fascial system. You're just wasting your time, right? Is just take it. And as soon as you start to feel a pull, as soon as you start to feel there's a restriction or a pull there, it's very, very mild, right? Then you stay there, right? And here's the interesting thing. Fascia needs a minimum of 90 seconds before it starts to release. You're a half a song in and you're just sitting hanging out, right? That's when it actually starts. And what you want to do is hold it and hold it and hold it, hold it. And then what you want to do is you want it to let go. If you think you're working too hard, you're working too hard, right? And eventually, and if you let go, if you close your eyes and you feel it, it might be like, it just feels like my head wants to turn. It just feels like my neck wants to come back, right? Allow that to occur. And that's where you'll start to get that fascia start to open up, right? And you might actually, if you pay attention, you may like, I can feel that in my lower back. We've just played connect the dots, right? And then you can start to see, well, where's that stemming from, right? So, as Sheila was saying, if we're SI joint, if you got an SI joint problem, you've probably got a pelvis problem. If you got a pelvis problem, you're probably gonna have a rib problem. If you have a rib problem, you're probably gonna have a neck problem. And we'll wait for the headaches to show up. So it all links together. The question is, where is it stemming from? Here's the funny thing. I don't know. And you don't know. But isn't it a great thing to find out? Right. And that's where, when I work with anybody, the fact is, it's not me fixing anybody. I don't buy into that at all. Right. It's teamwork, right? It's me helping you and you helping yourself, and we're going to get there together. It's not about me fixing people. People aren't broken. Right. It's the fact is that I'm a facilitator. I'm there to help you out. Right. Now let's go tell the truth on this thing and let's move on with our life.
That's awesome.
Sheila says, thanks, man. I just connected the dots.
There we go. Perfect. But honestly, and I can say this, like, I'll say this over and over and over again. It's because of the fact is we're taught to muscularly stretch. We're taught to hold it for 10 seconds. What a waste of time. I'm taught to hold 10 repetitions. Who cares? Right. And I'm taught that my back is sore, so I got to stretch my back. Right. I find that probably 95% of the patients I've ever treated with lower back pain, it's never a back problem. It's usually a front problem causing back pain.
Right.
Right? The front is the front of the back is the back of the front. They're not two separate things. They're one thing, right? And it's usually a front problem causing back pain. But what does everybody do? Well, it's my back. What does everybody treat? They treat my back, right? We're out there chasing pain, and it's a vicious cycle. Like, I felt better for a day, right? And then it came back. I felt better for 2 days and it came back. I felt better for 3 days and it came back. Why did it come back? Well, because we never actually dealt with the problem. We kept chasing pain. We kept chasing the symptom.
What do you think about like something like yoga? That must be a good thing to be doing for that
Yoga,
kind of thing, right?
absolutely. Yoga is probably one of the yoga and acupuncture are probably two things that'll actually probably the closest things to getting to tying into the fascial system. And so because yoga, right, is it's slow, it's sustained. So if you want to do meditative yoga, great, I'm all for it. Knock your socks off. But if you're going into just a pose, you're just going into a pose. You're doing it for the pose sakes. If that's what if that's your goal, by all means. But if you're trying to actually treat a problem, go into the pose, right? Hold it, feel it, then let your body do what it wants to do from that pose. Because the person beside you could be going left and you're going right, and the next person's going forward, right? But you're getting into that. But yoga is awesome. And a lot of my patients do yoga because it's fantastic because it's slow, it's sustained, right? And you're focusing in on what actually was truly going on. You're paying attention to you, but don't do it for the pose sake.
Right.
Downward dog is great, but and the other thing I want to say here real quick, because it just popped in my mind, we talk about whether it be treatment or yoga and those kind of things, right? Whenever fascial treatment should never ever be painful. The grip it and rip it does not work. I'm as much as I'm I've been a massage therapist and I don't call myself that, right? But getting the tar beaten out of you is not going to create a result, right? If you think about it, when somebody tries to push you hard, what is your automatic reaction? Right? So I'm pushing you hard. I'm going to get my elbow in there and dig. You're going, please get the hell out of there. And now we're expecting a positive result.
Right.
You tell me how that works, right? You cannot force anything in nature. It's an impossible task. You cannot force anything in nature, and human beings are in nature. So there should never be this. So if anybody's like to grip it and rip it and get in there, gonna dig or whatever, all you're doing is just pissing everything off, right? It is not the answer to a problem. It is basically now I just think that something's happened because it hurt.
Right.
Right.
And Yvonne is saying, so no pain, no gain is BS.
That's completely 100% BS. I don't buy in it. I don't buy into it for a second.
And I can honestly say that having been on your table, if I go for a massage, I do enjoy massages, but having been on your table, I know that I am fine for a long extended period after I've been on your table. After I've had a massage, I might feel good for a couple of days and then need to go back or feel the need to go back. So I know the extension, how long it lasts is so much greater when I've had myofascial release.
Yeah. And again, there's nothing wrong with massage. There's nothing wrong with chiro, and all those things are all great, right? The fact is, if it works for you and it's getting a result, keep doing what you're doing. I will never poo-poo anybody's from it. I don't care what it is, right? But if it's not working, then you need to start looking elsewhere because what you're doing is not working. So, and as I said, with bones are stupid. So you can have an SI joint locked down, get it adjusted, all right, feels good. It always will feel good because you just got it adjusted. And then 2 days later, well, now it's back again. I get it adjusted again, right? Oh, now it's back again. I get it adjusted again. Oh, it's back again. Well, it just won't stay. Well, of course it won't stay. It's not the joint isn't the problem, right? Bones are stupid.
Mm-hmm.
We have
Marina
another
is asking,
question. Yeah, go ahead.
She says, I have inflammation in my right leg, mostly the lower leg. What would you recommend? I agree with Tam. After treatment, it is longer lasting.
Yeah. So what I would recommend is something, and this is going to sound really simple. Ask her if she has somebody to pull on her leg. Don't lie. Don't pull your leg and lie. Play on words. No, but actually, seriously, if you have somebody around you, right, and just take and hold your ankle and just lightly pull, just lightly, just until you feel feel the pull in there. If anybody's ever played with silly putty, we all played with silly putty. Okay, try to take silly putty and pull it apart really hard, really fast. What happens?
It snaps.
snaps. It's hard. Like, it just doesn't work, right? It's like, you're just trying, right? But if you hang on to it and you just mildly hang on to it, what happens eventually?
It stretches.
Like saltwater
Yeah.
taffy. Whoa. It's the heat and the pressure that's in there that actually helps release fascia. So if someone just like you're playing with silly putty, right? Grab that leg, hang on, and hold there, right? And then pay attention to what you're feeling, right? And basically, and if that leg needs to turn a little bit, if it needs what to do, if you need to put your arm up the other way and try to open up that whole system, well, now you can start to open up the blood vessels. And what do blood vessels carry? Well, fluid, right? So if I have swelling, that means basically gravity is moving it down and there's not enough pressure to come back up, right? Maybe there's a fascial restriction somewhere along that way that you can help open up and allow, right? You're taking the boulders out of the stream, right? Does that answer the question?
Yep.
I
She
think so.
said she'll find someone to pull her leg.
Yeah, she has to find somebody to pull her leg.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't have somebody to pull her leg, put it under the couch or something like that kind of thing. Like lock it in somewhere, right? And then put your arm the other way, point your toe like pretend like somebody's pulling your leg, right? So just and pull your arm the opposite way.
You're pulling my leg.
Yeah, you will feel it all the way through. I'll tell you a story. I was in a course. I don't remember where it was, somewhere. Anyway, we did this, and so you get your body in a specific position where you're standing, right? And you put one leg forward, one leg back, whatever. Get your arm out here, and you twist and you torque. And what you did is you loaded up your fascial system, right? So it's loaded, right? Not painful. It's just that you can feel the pull in your system, right? And then they said, now stick out your tongue. And I stuck out my tongue and I could feel my big toe move.
That's awesome.
Oh boy.
So anatomically, right, there's a course called Anatomy Trains, and I can't remember Myers' last name. Anyway, anatomically, if you actually look at it from an anatomical perspective, you'll actually see the connections there, right? But it's true. So what does your tongue have to do with your big toe?
Everything.
Everything. And so it's not just woohoo. It's actually, if you look at it anatomically, you'll actually see the fascial lines, the fascial pulls all the way through your system, right?
Yeah.
So again, when if I point my toe and I lock it under a couch or a chair or something where it's not somebody else pulling it, and I pretend like I'm pulling and I'm opening up, and then I open up my arm the other way, right? And stretch it out, and I'm on the rack. I've created my own rack.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually stretching your fascial system.
Cool.
That is very cool.
So do you have any suggestions for like when you have, I guess, scar tissue in one area and it's really tight, like I have in my foot, as a matter of fact. And so what can you do to stretch that? Like I was at a physiotherapist the other day and she was working on it and with suction cups and trying to move that stuff around. And what can you do to loosen that, in an area?
So first of all, if I can say this, okay, the first thing you don't do is beat the shit out of it. That's the first thing, right? So because all you're going to do is just going to put your system into that, again, you're going to put in that system into that protective mechanism, right? And I got to protect this, right? And now we're trying to expect a positive result. So basically, if you want to take just your fingers, so just take the ends of your fingers, get into that scar, right? Just drop into it just a little bit, right? And hold it. Pay attention, just hold it. And what you'll feel is underneath your fingers, you will start to feel what it's doing. So when I treat a patient, right, I don't know where I'm going to go. I have no idea. We're going to start here. We're going to see where we end up, right? But what happens is I'm not going, I'm going to go 37 degrees to the left, right? What I'm doing is I'm following their system. I'm following what they're doing. I'm not telling it. I don't know what it's going to do. I have not a clue, right? It's their life. It's their story. But I'm following what they're doing. And it's the same thing with your foot is if you actually really pay attention, you'll feel it. And all of a sudden it's like, it just kind of feels like it wants to go left. Go left. It just feels like it kind of wants to pull down. Pull down, right? Sit there and hang on to it and wait and walk through and dance with it. right? And what you're doing is so the difference is you're not trying to force it to change. What you're doing is you're allowing it to change. And you can start, that's where you start to get that fascial start to open up, whatever. You're never going to get rid of scar tissue. If you do, you're creating another injury.
Right.
But scar tissue is there for a reason. It's a bridge. It's when you break your arm, you put a cast on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what scar tissue is. It's a cast. So, but what you can do is you can have that tissue underneath it, right, and start to move and start to, it will redevelop itself. It will start to move, right?
Nice.
Then you get that motion in there, and now if I get motion, well, now I can get joint motion. If I can get joint motion, I can get ligament motion. If I can get ligament motion, I can get tendon motion. If I can get tendon motion, I can get, and so on and so forth, right? That's when you get, remember, if you think of it as being in a liquid-based system, you want things to work in that liquid-based system.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so. Yeah, it's kind of exciting, actually.
And if you think you're working too hard,
You are.
You're working too hard.
So Warren, you have done some research. You did research a few years ago that was award-winning research, and it was. Can you explain it to us?
How much time we got?
As well, explain it short form, but we have time.
So the research that I did before that, we won an award on, and I'm embarking on a much bigger project now. COVID kind of threw a big wrench into that, but we're back on track. It is cognitive stress and chronic pain. So going back to when I was with the squirrels, originally we were talking about conation. We were talking about the cognitive aspect of the mind. So just briefly, the cognitive aspect of the mind is your instincts. It's your problem-solving strategy. It's how you take action. It's why you do what you do. So it has nothing to do with your intelligence, has nothing to do with your skills, has nothing to do with your experience. It has nothing to do with your personality. It has nothing to do with how you feel. It has nothing to do with your values. It's how you take action when you are problem solving. So we all, when we're posed with a problem or an issue, we're all going to come at it our own way because of the cognitive aspect of the mind. The cognitive aspect of the mind is the part of the mind that stays constant through life. So what I was discovering, there was people in positions or in jobs or in roles that were going against their cognitive natural talent. Now we all can do things that don't fit. We can all do things we don't like, right? We don't live in the land of bubblegum and rainbows and butterflies, right? But if we have to, we're all capable of doing everything. Every human being is, but we can't sustain it over time. That's where we get into trouble. So I would call it the golden handcuffs. So as an example, I'm working in a government office and I'm having to sit there and I'm going to go and I got to work on my Excel spreadsheet and I got to go and do reports and I got to run numbers and all those kind of things like that. Right. Now, I personally would rather stick needles in my eyes, but the thing is, right, if I have the golden handcuffs on, because I have every second Friday off, I have my benefit plan, I have my paycheck, I got my kids at home, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to stick this out. You know what? I've only got 37 years before I can retire. Right. And we get stuck there. So my research is showing that either you'll make it, if it's not working, right, because you can't sustain it over time, you will make a cognitive choice and you'll say, you know what, it's not working for me, right? Or you'll make an excuse and say, I don't like my boss or my manager doesn't treat me well, or they don't understand me, or whatever story you want to tell, right? You'll make a cognitive choice and you'll go and find another job, right? Because this isn't working. Or so what my research is showing is that basically that you will either end up with fibromyalgia or myofascial pain syndrome or one of these maladies that doesn't make any sense. Because why? Because your fascial system, that mental energy, the dissonance of the mental energy that's happening in your mind is now moving through your fascial system in your body. They're talking, it's body mind, right? And now it's contracting and it's saying, just get me out of here. Right? So your body's trying to protect itself. So you'll make a cognitive choice and you'll leave the job, or your body will take you out and you'll be now. So now I've got this fibromyalgia as an example, right? And now you try to explain it and you'll have no words for it. and people don't understand you, and you'll be super frustrated, and the people are trying to treat the pain, right? And basically what it is your system is trying to get you out of there. And so the body mind complex is showing that basically that what your brain, what's happening up here in your head, and it's subconscious. And the funny thing about subconscious mind is there's no words. So the patient can't express it. They can't say, well, there's no words there. They're trying to express something there's no words for. The subconscious mind talks in pictures and feelings. It doesn't talk in words. So it's mute. It can't express itself. And that's where the frustration comes. And so, I'll give you an example. The real of this. So there's a patient, I got a couple of great examples, but this one here is a girl. She was from Winnipeg. She was working for the passport office. Okay, so she's in the passport office, and she's a government worker, and she does her daily thing, and it's basically pretty systematic. And from the cognitive aspect, or the conative aspect of the mind, one of the aspects of her is called implementer, and that's how we deal with space intangibles. So as a what we call a long implementer. So in her world, she needs to move, she needs to build, she needs to be outside, she needs to touch and feel things. She needs that in order for her to basically, she needs that energy's got to move somewhere. So sitting at a desk and writing forms is the last thing that woman should be doing. So she started off going, well, I have pain. Now I have more pain. Well, now I got to start cutting back my hours, and I got to start cutting back my hours more. And eventually she ended up on disability. And that's when I saw her. So she's diagnosed with fibromyalgia. She's on disability, right? She otherwise healthy, cognitive. She's great, super person, really nice, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so then one day I said, how was your weekend? She said, it was great. I said, well, what'd you do? She says, I painted my house. I said, really? She goes, yeah, it was awesome. I said, how'd you feel? Oh, I felt like $1 million. I said, well, it's really fascinating because you can't sit behind a desk because that causes you pain, but you can paint your house. Now, what does that look? So in the insurance world, what does that look like? From the boss's perspective and the insurance perspective and the doctor's perspective, what does that look like?
Yeah.
But she's
Yeah,
like,
it looks like you're, yeah.
She doesn't want to work. She's lingering. I'm gonna take the easy way out, and I'm gonna collect my benefits. Had nothing to do with it. The fact is that she wasn't fulfilling that instinctive need, right? And that's why her body was taking her out. So now, so worked with her, whatever, we got this all figured out, right? She left her job, albeit, thank God, right? And you know where she actually is now working and doing unbelievably well? In BC at her brother's greenhouse.
I was just going to say in a greenhouse.
yeah,
And she's working with plants, and she's digging in the dirt, and she's planting things, and she's building things, and she's got the
Nice.
dogs around, whatever. And she's fulfilling that internal need, right, to do things her way, right?
Yeah.
And her pain was drastically decreased, right? So why would sitting behind a desk cause that much pain? It had nothing to do with sitting and everything to do with that internal drive and need that she needed in order to be successful.
Right.
The dissonance in her mind caused the dissonance in her body, and it was through the fascial system. So that's just an example of that, right? That's the research that I'm doing to show that when we're in the wrong job, we're in the wrong role, we got the golden handcuffs on, and it's not working, your body will find a way to get you out of there, right? The fact is that is the question, it's talking to you. The question is, are you listening?
Right. Right. And so the research that you're doing now is an extension of that?
It's an extension of that. Yeah, we're going to a bigger, much bigger project now. So the whole idea now is to actually get a paper written and a book written and really make this happen. So we've been doing I did case studies up until then, and just to see if I could find the proof that this was real, because I when I saw it, I knew it. The fact is that could I prove it? And I will say that as soon as you start talking about the conative aspect of the mind, no one has an idea what you're talking about. As soon as you start talking about fascia, no one knows what you're talking about. And so I'm taking two very complex, problems that no one talks about and put them together and then find a solution for people.
Yes.
beautiful. That is awesome.
That is really awesome. Okay, well, Warren, we're at the point in our show now where I'm going to do some rapid fire squirrel shots. So I'm going to ask you some really quick questions. You need to answer off the top of your head, whatever comes to your mind as quickly as you can. Are you ready for that?
Hang on. It's not vodka. All right.
Okay, your favorite book,
The Four Agreements.
most used emoji,
Kissy.
weird quirk,
Weird quirk. Oh boy, that's a good one. Weird quirk.
Can I answer? No.
Weird quirk. Geez. Can I pass on that one for now?
Okay, we got to come back to it.
That's fine.
Lifelong dream,
Travel the world.
best feature,
Well, my hair now. I think I'd probably say my sense of humor.
favorite song.
Into the Mystic by Van Morrison.
If you were a superhero, what would your power be?
Ooh. I think that I would be like Flash from The Incredibles and just be able to move very fast.
Your favorite cuisine?
Ooh, I have so many. Mexican.
Where do you want to retire?
Everywhere.
The last time you were emotional?
Oh boy. That's gonna sound really bad. Geez. It's probably about a month, I guess, so ago. I had a bit of a meltdown, so I'll be vulnerable there. So life got to me, and I let it go.
Weird quirk?
Do you have an answer for me?
I'll leave it. Okay. And now Cindy has one final question that we're going to end with.
I think you even know what it is.
I've asked it myself.
If you
Mhm.
could climb to the highest mountain and everybody could hear what you had to say, what would you say?
It's love one another.
Nice.
It's love one another, and I say that with sincere honesty, because I think that even from an energetic perspective, and especially the work that I've been doing in myofascial release, right? Everything comes from a place of love, and I think if you come from a place of love, that energy then basically spreads itself out, and that is the ripple effect, and that is how we better the pond.
Absolutely, it is.
Awesome.
So, Warren, we're going to get your contact information put into the post beneath, but just can you share right now what it is in case anybody's got a pen handy and they want it immediately?
So it is Warren, WARREN, at instinctivesolutions.ca. If you look at my website, which is instinctivesolutions.ca, you will see nothing about myofascial release. It is the other part of my world. And everybody who's listening, I actually have hired a woman by the name of Rachel Homewood, who is going to be starting May 1. So I'm putting her under my wing as I've been stepping away from doing my regular MFR practice and speaking and writing and doing my research. And that's where my energy is going to be going. So we're going to have another person who's going to be able to take care of anybody who's interested.
Right.
And if you want to hear Warren's podcast, it's on Spotify, it's on iTunes, it's on other platforms,
All
Facebook.
of the platforms. Yeah, you can find it on my website. And it's the Better the Pond Pondcast.
Mm-hmm. Well, we want to thank you for being here tonight, Warren. We really appreciated it. Our listeners are commenting. Oh my God, you guys are funny. Thank you for this talk. Beautiful. Love, love, love. Awesome show. So thank you again for being here. We've really appreciated it. And I think that you have helped a lot of people and given us a lot of value today. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to sign off from TTSN. Thanks for being here, everybody, and listening. And we look forward to you being back next week, people, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, squirrels.
Bye-bye.
Good night.